Lake Lanier is one of the most highly sought after locations in North Georgia. With gorgeous views right from your home, who wouldn't want to live on a lake like this? The only problem is, can you actually afford to live on the lake? Hi, I'm Sarah Mislowski with KeyPoint Homes Group, a local real estate team helping clients from all over the country relocate right here to the North Metro Atlanta area. As a resident of Lake Lanier myself, I completely get the appeal of living here. Lake Lanier spreads throughout a total of 5 counties, with a majority of it sitting in Hall and Forsyth County. The lake has a shoreline of 692 miles and it takes up 37,000 acres. The south end of the lake is only about 50 miles north of Atlanta, and then you have the north end and it's only about 65 miles from the city, depending upon where you're at. There are several towns that sit on the lake, so you can choose from smaller towns like Murrayville, Claremont, and Lula, or you've got bigger towns like Gainesville, Cumming, and Dawsonville. The north end of the lake is a bit more rural, and it tends to be a bit more affordable since it's not as close to all of the shopping, restaurants, and amenities. Now, the south end is usually way pricier because it's closer to shopping, restaurants, and the city. No matter which end of the lake you end up on, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. So what goes into lake prices and what should you expect to pay for a house here? For starters, there are a ton of different factors that go into pricing lake home. You've got the view, walkability to the lake, and whether or not the house has a dock permit are some of the biggest factors that go into coming up with a price. If you want a clear view of the lake with a gentle walk down to the water to your own dock, it's going to be expensive, very expensive. One of the most common questions or comments we get is, why doesn't anyone just cut down the trees behind their house so they can see the lake better and increase the value? And well, that's because you're not allowed to. The Army Corps of Engineers owns the lake itself and most of the land right around it. You will occasionally find homes where the property line goes clear into the water, but more often than not, there is going to be a buffer of core property. This also means that a lot of times the backyard of a home on the lake looks like it's quite large, but most of it is Army Corps property, meaning you cannot do anything to it. And when I mean anything, nothing. Can't do anything. You can't add a fence, you can't add a pool, you can't cut down trees, can't do anything. So since that land cannot be altered, if you are dead set on having a clear view of the water from inside your house, that is going to limit your options, and since that's rare, it means that it's going to be really expensive. It's really hard for buyers sometimes to grasp the pricing on Lake Lanier. There are many homes that if you were to pick them up and, like move them over a couple of blocks or anywhere else not on the lake, you would see a massive decrease in the price. Being on the lake is drastically more expensive than being off of it, even by only a mile or two. It can be challenging to come up with a list price for a lake home because oftentimes there are not a lot of comparable homes to use to help curate that price. Someone recently asked me why one house on the lake sold for one price and just down the street another one sold for so much less. And you have to know that lake homes are not like buying a house in a neighborhood where, usually they're pretty close in line to value of one another, or there's like really good comparable houses. If you go back to those 3 biggies that we talked about earlier, having a dock, the view, and the walk to the dock, those are crucial in pricing a home. You and your neighbor can have totally different views and walks to the dock, even though you are next door to one another. Your neighbor can also have a 2-slip covered party dock and you have a swim platform, which also impact the value of your home since you can't upgrade the size of your dock in most cases. Now, if you're watching this video and you're thinking, wow, there's a lot that goes into buying a lake home, well, we've got tons of videos that cover this, so make sure you check those out. Other times you might also look at your neighbor's house and you can see that their house sits on the water while your house might be across the street and you have to walk across the street in between other houses to get to your dock. Like this house, for example. This house sits across the street from its dock. It is a 1,500 square foot home with 3 small bedrooms and 3 small bathrooms. It's currently listed for $700,000. Again, if you picked up this house and you moved it, let's say, to the next street over where there was no dock access, the fact that you don't have that dock, the value would decrease drastically, like several hundred thousands of dollars drastically. Now, this home has been on the market for quite some time, and I do think it's a little bit overpriced, but it's not that far off from where it should be. It is a major downfall that you don't get access to the water from directly behind your house, and the walk to the dock, you have to go over the river and through the woods to get down to the dock, and it's kind of a steep walk, and it's far. You can kind of see here. And this is by far one of the biggest reasons that I think this house is still on the market. I mentioned earlier how Lake Lanier is controlled by the Army Corps of Engineers, and they are also control all of the dock permits on the lake. There are a total of 10,615 docks permitted on Lake Lanier, and all of those permits have been given out, meaning that if you do not have the ability to have a dock right now on the lake because you already have a permit, you don't have the ability to get a dock. Now, at the time of filming this video, there are currently only 59 houses for sale that have a dock. The most expensive house is $1 shy of $6 million, and the most affordable home is $464,000. Of these 59 houses, 33 of them are listed above the $1 million price point. The most affordable option for a house with a dock at the moment of filming this video is $465,000. Now, I've been in this house before, and it is very small, only 1,800 square feet, but it does really have great views of the lake. You have almost no land. Most of it is Army Corps property, and the driveway is very steep. It's actually at the bottom of like a shared road, and the neighborhood is, well, not the most picturesque neighborhood you've ever seen. Again, this is something that you will find all over the lake. You can have a gorgeous multi-million-dollar house right next door to a mobile home that looks like it might fall over if you pushed it hard enough. But like we talked about earlier, unlike a traditional neighborhood, having these kinds of houses as neighbors when you are on the lake will not impact your property values the same way they would if you were in a traditional neighborhood. But it definitely does take away some of the appeal of the home in this scenario. Now, let me give you an example of what is almost a perfect lake house. I showed this to a client and absolutely fell in love with it. I know in the pictures it looks a little dark and dated, but it was one of those houses that coat of paint would make an entirely different house. The views here were incredible. Some of the rooms were on the smaller side, but it felt really cozy, not cramped at all. It was listed for $1.295, and because of the views, privacy, amazing outdoor space, and gentle walk to the water to get to the dock, well, this home was pretty near perfect. Now, it was on over an acre of land, which is rare, but it's not super usable land, and there wasn't much of a backyard to speak of. So if you had dogs, that wouldn't really be an ideal situation if you needed to put up a fence. Now, when you spend almost $1.3 million on a home, especially in the North Metro Atlanta area, where your money usually gets you pretty far, you kind of expect things to be like move-in ready, and that's not typically going to be the case on the lake. You will find a lot of 1960s style ranches that were built right after the completion of when the lake was made, and they have some odd floor plans. I can speak from experience on this since I'm currently sitting in the basement of one of those 1960s ranches that had a weird floor plan. Our house did not have a true master suite with a bathroom. We just got finished renovating the home to create the perfect master bedroom suite. Sometimes I will show lake properties to clients who aren't really familiar with the way things work, and they'll say things like, well, this feels like it needs a lot of updates for $800,000. This home feels way overpriced. Or, I can't believe someone thinks that this home is worth $600,000. It's a complete gut job. And unfortunately, while that may be true, it's just the way the cookie crumbles a lot of the time here on Lake Lanier. I don't want to tell you that you're gonna have to spend $1 million to get the perfect lake house, but even that much won't get you the perfect house. There's always going to be some compromises involved somewhere. Let me say that again. You're going to have to compromise, whether it's the view, the walk to the dock, the location, or the house. You just have to figure out which one of those four, or all of them, you're willing to compromise on. As I mentioned earlier, 33 out of the 59 houses actively for sale are over $1 million. Most everything below that price point will need some kind of updating. Now, we've been talking about perfect views and easy walks down to your dock. What does that look like? How much is that going to cost? Well, here's an example of a gorgeous 5-year-old home with incredible lake views and the most gentle flat walk to the dock you're gonna find. Now, it is under contract, so we won't know exactly what it sells for until it closes, but this home was listed for $3.35 million, and it is a newer newer build, and it's pretty big. But even then, I would venture to say that these are literal million-dollar views, probably even more. You could build this same house on the same size lot in Monroe for maybe $1.5 million. At least that's my humble opinion. So you can just see how valuable those three things are. Having that flat walk to the dock, having a great view, and the location. So what do you think? Would you be willing to pay $1 million for a home that might still have quite a few quirks in order to be on the lake? Let me know in the comments below, and if you're thinking about making a move to Georgia, I want to be your real estate agent. You can find my contact information below this video, and of course, if you're considering a lake house, you have to check out this video. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date on top of all things moving to Georgia. You can find that below this video as well.